Hey guys, tonight we dive headfirst into the strangest thing you've probably never thought about. Why Victorian women were terrified of laughing in public. Picture this, you're wearing 4 layers of petticoats. Your ribs are hugging each other like long-lost siblings thanks to a steel-boned corset. And your hair is pinned so tightly your thoughts can't escape. You step outside, the cobblestones slick from last night's fog, and heaven forbid something strikes you as funny. One stifled giggle too loud, and suddenly the eyes of 1,000 monocled men swivel your way. Yep, you're not just embarrassed, you might have committed a social crime. You probably won't survive this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and pretend it's raining cats and dogs out there. Don't worry. No umbrellas needed. Let's start tonight's journey with that rain in the background. You trudge through the gray morning streets of London, parasol in hand, and the fog clings to your skirts like a needy cat. The clop of hooves echoes around you, and the air smells like wet coal and horseradish. You pass a butcher who shouts cheerily to a client, and you almost laugh at the absurdity of a chicken carcass wearing a tiny bonnet-long story. It's promotional, but you can't, because if you do, you might pass out, and not from embarrassment. The truth is, your lungs have no room. That corset around your waist, it's squeezing everything north of your belly button into unnatural positions. Victorian corsetry isn't just fashion, it's full contact survival. The goal was to pinch the waist to 18 inches or less, which sounds charming until you try to cough. Now imagine bursting into laughter. Not only is it socially risky, it's physically dangerous. Laughter requires breathing. Deep, uncontrollable, sometimes doubled over, belly quaking breathing. And that just doesn't mix with 20 feet of whale boning strapped across your ribs. There are documented cases, yes. Actual reports of women fainting mid-laugh, only to awaken dazed, horrified, and with their hairpins poking their scalps like judgmental needles. Historians still argue whether the average Victorian woman truly believed her organs could shift permanently from a good chuckle, but plenty of medical texts from the time suggest they did. Some claim that intense emotions, like unrestrained laughter, could disrupt the body's delicate humors. You know, the invisible fluids keeping your mood and uterus aligned with the moon or whatever. Then there's the tight social choreography. You're not just walking in a dress, you're performing femaleness in an elaborate, unspoken ballet. Every step, every glance, every word is measured. Laughter, especially the kind that explodes without warning, is chaos. And Victorian society feared chaos the way a house cat fears cucumbers. You're expected to smile just enough to seem pleasant. But anything more, anything real, makes people uncomfortable. It suggests that you have thoughts, maybe even opinions, or a sense of humor that isn't regulated by Queen Victoria's apparent allergy to mirth. Picture yourself at a tea party. There's that lady who always has slightly too much sherry and tells questionable jokes involving Frenchmen and missing bonnets. You laugh. Loudly. Too loudly. Instantly. Forks pause mid-air. Someone coughs. A teacup clinks ominously. And just like that, your reputation is on the line. You don't just feel the judgment, you wear it, stitched into every panel of your dress. It's in the way the hostess suddenly forgets to invite you next time. It's in the sidelong glance from the vicar's wife who's mentally recalibrating your moral compass. The irony laughter, in private, is encouraged sort of in your own drawing room, tittering with other women over embroidery. You're allowed to laugh, but only the right kind of laugh. A soft, ladylike ripple. Nothing nasal. Nothing booming. And if your shoulders shake, good heavens, control yourself. But outside, on the street, never. It's not just about the sound, it's about the message. Laughter in public suggests spontaneity, lack of control, and worst of all, enjoyment. And enjoyment is dangerous. Enjoyment means desire. Desire means passion. And passion, that's a one-way ticket to moral collapse. You walk past a group of working-class women unloading laundry and hear their laughter bubbling up without shame. It's raw, full-bodied, musical. You envy it, but you don't join in. Because their freedom is your scandal. You're from a respectable family. Your laugh is supposed to be muted, ornamental, something that sounds like a harp falling asleep. One woman laughs so hard, she drops a sheet in the mud. Another bends over, gasping with glee, clutching her sides. You feel your own lips twitch. But no, you must not. Because that corset, it's not just physical. It's metaphorical, too. It wraps around your behavior, your voice, your humor. It's the reason you speak in polite phrases and let men explain puns to you you've understood since childhood. A gust of wind hits, and your hat nearly flies off. You gasp and catch it just in time. It's funny, silly, even, but you swallow the laugh. You have to. After all, someone might see. You look up at the looming facade of a manners school on the corner windows like watching eyes. There, young girls are learning how to curtsy, how to enter a room, how to smile without smiling too much, and how to laugh, if they must, into their gloved hands. Always behind the hand, always quiet. Because a woman who laughs too freely is a woman not quite in control, and in a world obsessed with control. That makes her dangerous. But you wonder what happens when too many women start to laugh anyway, loudly, publicly. What's the real fear hiding behind all this suppression? Well, we'll get there. But first, let's take a peek into the Victorian doctor's office, where your laugh isn't just scandalous, it's a symptom. You sit on the stiff horsehair cushion of the waiting room, surrounded by the smell of iodine and boiled wool, and try not to fidget. Outside, the street noise is muffled by thick velvet curtains, but inside, it's even quieter. You don't dare clear your throat. There's another woman to your left, clutching her gloves so tightly the kid leather squeaks. She sneezes softly into her handkerchief, and for a brief moment, you're both startled by the sound, as if anything louder than a whisper might shatter the delicate china teacup of this room. You've been summoned by your physician for a mysterious nervous condition. You know what it really is? You laughed too hard at a dinner party last week, then made it worse by saying something clever. Not bawdy, not improper, just clever. It earned a chuckle from a young barrister and a raised eyebrow from his mother. And now, here you are, sitting under a ticking clock like a condemned prisoner waiting for the verdict. The doctor ushers you in with a furrowed brow and an expression that screams, "I've read too many case studies and not enough novels." He gestures to a chaise longue, and you lower yourself with the practiced grace of someone taught from age 7 how to sit without wrinkling. He leans forward, peering at you over his wire spectacles. "Do you often find yourself overcome?" he asks, voice dipped in caution, like laughter might be catching. You blink, overcome. "Sir," with sudden, inexplicable bursts of emotion, particularly mirth. You want to ask if mirth is now a medical emergency, but you're already tired, so you nod. Carefully, he scribbles something in your file, probably in Latin, which makes it sound more important. Then he says the word you dread: hysteria. Oh yes, the diagnosis so vague, so elastic. It could mean anything from actual trauma to having a bad hair day. You're not ill. You laughed. That's it. But laughter, uncontrolled and unregulated, is one of the many symptoms of female hysteria, an imaginary disorder that's been haunting women for centuries, like a clingy ghost with a medical degree. Here's a little mainstream history. For your bedside table, the term hysteria comes from the Greek word hystera, meaning uterus. Yup. The original theory was that women's wombs wandered around their bodies like lost puppies, causing emotional distress, breathlessness, and you guessed it, laughter. Plato once claimed the uterus could move like an animal and cause all sorts of trouble. Not exactly the high point of gynecological science. Fast forward to the Victorian era, and not much has improved. Hysteria has become a catch-all diagnosis for everything doctors don't understand or don't want to. You're anxious hysteria, sad hysteria, too happy, definitely hysteria. You could basically sneeze and be prescribed a regime of rest, bland food, and cold baths. Historians still argue whether most Victorian doctors actually believed in hysteria as a real illness, or whether it was a convenient way to keep women quiet, docile, and crucially out of the public eye. But either way, it worked. You shift slightly on the chaise and try to hide the fact that you're clenching your jaw. Your laughter, something that once felt spontaneous and joyful, has become ammunition against you. The doctor folds his hands and begins to outline a treatment plan. It includes no reading, no strong emotions, and plenty of time spent lying in dark rooms. You wonder what happens if you laugh again. Do they up the dose? Call for the pelvic massage? Yes, that was a thing. Victorian medicine was complicated. Maybe next time they'll recommend a sanatorium visit. Nothing too harsh, just a little retreat where the curtains are always drawn and the meals taste like boiled sadness. But there's a deeper terror here. It's not just that society punishes your laughter, it's that it medicalizes it. Your joy, your humor, your spontaneous bursts of delight are pathologized. You become something to be treated, corrected, subdued. It makes you doubt yourself. You start to wonder if your laughter is wrong. Is it really so unladylike to find things funny, to laugh at a joke, or at nothing, or at the absurdity of your daily life of cucumber sandwiches, of husbands who can't boil water, of your own corseted reflection in the mirror. You begin to suppress it, not out of shame, but out of sheer exhaustion. It's easier to smile politely than to risk another diagnosis. You tuck your wit away like contraband lace in a trunk, only taking it out in the company of trusted women. You think of your friend Eleanor, who once made you laugh so hard during a rainstorm that you collapsed on a bench, soaked and gasping. You remember the tears streaming down your face, the ache in your cheeks, the lightness in your chest. It felt like flying, like freedom. But then Eleanor got married and stopped joking. She learned to smile like wallpaper and speak in agreeable nothings. The last time you visited, she barely giggled. You mentioned that old rainstorm, and she looked out the window and said, "Oh yes, that day," as if it had happened to someone else. So, you learned to ration your laughter like a precious resource. A few drops in a private moment, a soft chuckle behind a fan, but not in public, not where doctors, neighbors, or family might overhear and think you've gone hysterical. The odd thing, men can laugh, loudly, crudely, recklessly. A man who laughs heartily is robust, confident. A woman who does the same is disturbed. That's the unspoken rule. The doctor finishes his notes and tells you to avoid excessive stimulation. You nod like a good patient, but in your mind, you see that chicken carcass in a bonnet again, and a bubble of laughter rises uninvited. You press your lips shut, hard. You don't want to give him an excuse to tighten the metaphorical leash any further. He hands you a tiny bottle of laudanum for the nerves, as if the real problem is inside you, not the society that's twisted joy into disease. You walk out of the clinic with that familiar Victorian cocktail swirling in your head: boredom, bitterness, and just a hint of absurdity. Your footsteps echo along the damp street, and you catch your reflection in a window. You look fine, respectable, upright, but inside, you feel the pressure of your own silenced laughter like steam in a kettle. You wonder what might happen if you let it out. Just once. Let it boil over, shake the corset, startle the doctor, crack the porcelain of all these tight, trembling rules. But not yet. Not today. Because next, we're heading into the world of etiquette, where laughter isn't just discouraged, it's micromanaged. You'll need to bring your best fake giggle and maybe a measuring tape. Things are about to get painfully precise. You're in the drawing room now. The curtains are drawn. The oil lamps give everything that soft, flattering glow, kind to wallpaper and complexions alike, and there's a faint hum of string music coming from a phonograph in the next room. The tea has been poured. Lemon slices float politely, and someone's aunt is mid-sentence about the tragedy of rhododendrons in partial shade. You sit straight-backed, knees together, one hand in your lap, the other delicately wrapped around a teacup you're absolutely not allowed to drink from until the hostess sips first. And here's the kicker: you're expected to enjoy yourself, but not too much. In fact, your enjoyment is to be precisely measured, just like your waist, just like your smile, just like your laugh, especially your laugh. You shift slightly, careful not to rustle your skirts, and glance around the room. Every woman here has trained to be agreeable, pleasant, decorative, They all have the same half smile, not too big, not too small, just enough to imply contentment without risking attention. You know the rules. You learned them in childhood. Rule 1. Never laugh with your mouth open. It's vulgar. Your lips must remain gently parted, like the opening of a rosebud. Any visible teeth are to be implied, not seen. Rule 2. No sounds above a whisper. A lady's laugh is a gentle lilt, like a breeze through lace curtains. No snorts, no gasps, no wheezes that might suggest you have working lungs. Rule 3. Cover your mouth, always, whether with your glove, your fan, or your teacup. Laughter is not to be seen. It must be hinted at, like a secret you're only barely sharing. And if you forget any of these rules, don't worry, someone will remind you. Probably your great aunt, who once fainted when someone said trousers in mixed company. Etiquette books of the Victorian period are full of these kinds of instructions. They don't just tell you what to wear or how to address a duchess. They tell you how to behave down to the flicker of an eyelash. Laughing, it turns out, is a whole chapter unto itself. Here's one mainstream historical fact for your amusement: the habits of good society. A best-selling etiquette manual from 1863 recommended that women laugh not often, nor loudly, but with a soft ripple that charms, not startles. Ripple, like you're a human pond. And heaven help you if you miscalculate. Laughter could unravel all the dignity you spent the afternoon stitching together with eye contact and passive compliments. One misjudged giggle, and suddenly you're uncultured. Or worse, giddy. That word stings more than you'd expect. In Victorian code, giddy is a half step from flighty, which is one corset string from loose. You get the idea. Of course, men don't have these rules. They can laugh freely, thump their knees, throw their heads back. Their laughter shows confidence, dominance, virility. Yours is supposed to be decorative. You're the ribbon on the joke, not the punchline. Historians still argue whether this intense regulation of women's laughter was rooted more in moral panic or aesthetic control. Maybe both. After all, uncontrolled laughter disrupts the look of things. It wrinkles dresses. It disturbs silence. It draws attention, and attention, for a woman, is a currency she must spend very wisely. Across the room, Lady Agatha lets out a light trill in response to a joke about hunting dogs. It's the kind of joke that isn't funny, but is designed to allow a proper laugh. A socially sanctioned chuckle. You mimic her, letting out your own soft lilt. It's exhausting, like pretending to sneeze convincingly every few minutes. But then, someone tells a real joke, one that actually lands. Maybe it's the clumsy waiter slipping on a doily, or the parlor maid mispronouncing a guest's name just so. And someone, some poor soul, breaks character and lets out a proper belly laugh. Everything stops. The piano halts. The conversation stills. There's a pause that stretches just a second too long. And then the hostess tuts lightly and redirects the room. But the damage is done. A few women exchange looks. Someone whispers, "New money." The laugher shrinks inward, cheeks flushed, suddenly very interested in her teaspoon. It's not fair. But then, you're realizing, none of this is... And yet, this etiquette has been drilled into you so thoroughly. It feels like instinct. Your laugh doesn't come out as a bark or a cackle anymore. It's a carefully measured breath through your nose. Something restrained, something pre-approved. You've laughed like this for so long that anything else feels dangerous. You remember, as a child, being scolded for laughing too hard. Your mother's voice, sharp and low. Do you want people to think you're a fool? Not. Was it funny? Not. Are you happy? But what will they think? Now here you are, grown, still asking that question. You try to imagine what it would feel like to laugh loudly in this room, right now. To throw your head back, clutch your ribs, snort like a kitchen maid. The fantasy is almost too delicious. You'd scare the cat. You'd make the butler drop a tray. You might even knock over that tower of delicate respectability everyone keeps stacking higher and higher with every fake smile and polite giggle. But you don't, because you're not here to be yourself. You're here to be received. You glance toward the men's side of the drawing room. Yes, they often separate. Over there, they're roaring with laughter, brandy glasses sloshing, jokes flying. No one's correcting their posture. No one's worried about propriety. It stings, but it's not surprising. Still, you keep your seat, your smile, your soft ripple of a laugh, because the etiquette is not just a performance, it's a survival strategy. If you break character, you risk being cast out, or worse, pitied. You wonder if they know what they've stolen. That, in silencing your laugh, they've taken something that made you feel alive, something that once bubbled up like a fountain, and now has to be filtered, softened, buried. Outside, it's starting to rain. The real kind this time, not our cozy imagination storm. You hear the patter against the window panes, and it sounds like applause for a play no one's enjoying. A woman across the room glances out at the storm and sighs. So dreary, she says, and you, without thinking, say, well, at least the flowers won't die of embarrassment. It slips out before you can stop it, a little sideways quip. A few heads turn. One woman smiles. The rest just blink. You hold your breath. Then someone titters. Just one. A soft sound. And then another. The room relaxes, if only slightly. You feel a small thrill, not quite laughter, but it's ghost. Maybe there's still a way to laugh here. A quiet rebellion. A coded chuckle in plain sight. But not everyone is content with just sneaking in their laughter. Some women, bold, brilliant, a little dangerous, want to reclaim it entirely. They're writing, performing, breaking etiquette altogether. And next, you're going to meet them. You sit in the back row of a small, dimly lit theater, the kind that smells like old wood, gaslight, and lemon polish. There's velvet on the seats, although it's threadbare in places, and the crowd around you is mixed. There are women like you, corseted, gloved, cautious, and then there are others. Bohemian scarves, loose hair, laughter already in their eyes. You glance around nervously. What are you even doing here? This isn't exactly the place your etiquette book would recommend. But curiosity has pulled you out tonight. That, and a rumor. A woman, an actress, no less has been making audiences laugh. Not polite, hidden behind a fan giggles. Real. rib cracking, nose snorting laughter, and she's doing it on purpose. The curtain rises. On stage strides a woman in trousers, actual trousers, and your jaw nearly drops. She doesn't walk like a lady. She strides like someone who owns her space, like she's on her way to punch someone important. Her hair is unpinned, her eyes sharp, and when she opens her mouth, her voice booms. Within moments, the audience erupts with laughter. Not just the men, the women, too. Even the respectable ones. One older lady in the front row wipes tears from her cheeks as she shakes silently, her corset visibly fighting back. You find yourself laughing before you even realize it's sharp. Sudden, from the belly. You slap a hand to your mouth, shocked at yourself. No one turns. No one gasps. No doctor leaps from the wings to declare you hysterical. You're just laughing. You've never felt anything like this in public before. It's like being handed a key to a locked room you didn't know you'd been living in. The woman on stage is what people might call a comedienne, though that word doesn't yet carry much weight. She's a little dangerous, a little scandalous, and undeniably magnetic. Her timing is razor sharp. Her jokes poke fun at men, manners, society. She impersonates a stiff governess, a bumbling politician, and gasp a physician diagnosing a woman with excess of wit. The crowd howls. Mainstream fact-incoming female performers like this did exist in the Victorian period, particularly in music halls and variety theaters. They were often seen as socially dubious, but incredibly popular. Names like Marie Lloyd and Vesta Tilley packed houses and made audiences laugh with cheeky songs and satirical sketches. They weren't ladies, strictly speaking, but they had power. Real, raucous, audible power. And here's the thing. They weren't just tolerated, they were adored. Women in the audience came to these shows, sometimes under cover of darkness, to let loose, to hear someone say out loud what they couldn't, to laugh, not in spite of society, but at it. Historians still argue whether these early comedians truly challenged gender norms or simply reinforced them through satire. Some say their cross-dressing acts and body humor subtly disrupted the very fabric of what it meant to be womanly. Others argue they were just playing along for laughs. Either way, their impact was undeniable. They gave women a taste, just a taste of what public laughter could feel like. You sit back in your seat, a little stunned. This isn't just entertainment. It's rebellion, wrapped in a punchline. It's etiquette turned inside out and worn like a clown hat. And the audience, they're eating it up. The performer ends her act with a wink and a mock curtsy so exaggerated it nearly topples her over. The crowd leaps to its feet. Applause thunders through the theater like a train at full speed. You find yourself clapping until your gloves feel damp. You leave the theater with cheeks flushed and ribs aching in the best way. The night air hits you, cool and damp, and you suck in a breath like someone newly born. It's still raining, of course it is, but you don't mind. The gas lamps flicker along the street, reflecting off the cobblestones like tiny stars. For a moment, you imagine what life would be like if all women were allowed to laugh like that freely, publicly, powerfully. No need for fans or gloves or delicate coughs. Just laughter, loud and wild. But reality returns as your cab pulls up. The driver eyes you with suspicion as you slide in, still grinning. "Good evening, miss," he mutters, as if laughter might be catching. You murmur a thank you and sit back. Your face hurts from smiling. It's a good kind of hurt. At home, you creep inside, careful not to wake the household. You pause at the mirror, looking at yourself with slightly smudged cheeks and bright eyes. You don't look hysterical. You look alive. There's something a little heartbreaking about that realization. You're not sick. You've never been sick. You've just been stifled. You undress slowly, letting each pin fall with a tiny metallic sigh. You think about that performer, how bold she was, how brash. You wonder what it cost her. Because it always costs something. Quirky tidbit for your pillow. Some of these early comedians, like Vesta Tilley, actually performed dressed as men, not just for comedy, but because it gave them permission to speak more freely. Wearing trousers on stage was a loophole. If you were playing a man, you could be bold. Audiences laughed because it was a joke. But somewhere under the laughter, something else stirred. A challenge, a dare. And that's the heart of it, isn't it? Laughter, when women wield it, becomes dangerous. It's not just noise. It's commentary. It's resistance. It says, "I see you. I'm not fooled. I have my own voice." You think about trying it. Just once, at the next tee, perhaps. Drop a line that teeters on the edge of propriety. Something subtle, but sharp. See who laughs. See who doesn't. See who looks over their shoulder. Of course, you'll have to be careful. Too much laughter, and you might find yourself back on that doctor's chaise. But maybe a little mischief is worth it. Just enough to stretch your lungs, to feel human. You slip into bed, listening to the rain tap the window like an old friend. Somewhere in the distance, a carriage rolls by, its wheels hissing on the wet road. Sleep pulls at you, gentle but insistent. And in your final waking thoughts, you see that performer again. Trousers, loud voice, arms spread wide. And you wonder, not for the last time, what it would feel like to take the stage yourself. But that dream will have to wait. Next, we're heading into high society. Ballroom season. Fans, flirtation, fainting couches. And the strangest thing of all, how laughing too loudly might cost you your one big chance at a future. The ballroom is glowing like a lantern from the inside out. Every chandelier trembling slightly under the weight of too many crystals and too much expectation. You've never seen so many candles. It's warm, almost too warm, and the air smells like lavender powder, beeswax polish, and the unmistakable tang of anticipation. Music spills from the quartet in the corner, just soft enough to make conversation difficult, just loud enough to remind everyone to stay in rhythm. You stand near the wall where the unmarried girls begin their night. This is not a place of comfort. This is a holding pen. And like every other young woman here tonight, you are dressed like a promise. Silk bodice, satin gloves, lace-trimmed fan. You're not just here to dance. You're here to audition. Smile well. Walk gracefully. Don't eat too much. And, most importantly, for the love of your family's reputation, do not laugh too loudly. Because laughter, here, can cost you everything. A snort at the wrong moment. A cackle during a slow waltz. even a genuine giggle during supper. It's all risky. These aren't just rich people swirling in time to a Strauss melody. These are potential husbands, potential futures, and to secure your place in this glittering world, you must appear calm, charming, modest, and above all composed. You smooth your skirts and take a delicate sip of champagne, even though you'd prefer something stronger. Somewhere to your left, someone whispers that Lady Meredith actually guffawed when her dance partner told her a joke about bishops and barrels. Did you hear the voice says, laced with glee? She'll never be asked again. His mother was mortified. You wonder if Meredith even liked the man. If the joke was actually funny. If the laugh came from surprise, or freedom, or both. That's the quiet tragedy of a Victorian ballroom. It looks like joy, but it smells like fear. Every step is calculated, every reaction rehearsed, and laughter real. Unrehearsed, unscripted laughter has no place here. You're reminded of an odd little fact, mainstream, yes, and strange enough to stick many etiquette manuals of the time included illustrated diagrams of ballroom errors. One, in particular, cautioned against undue merriment, which it illustrated with a woman leaning too far backward in laughter, her décolletage dangerously close to rebellion, her expression scandalized, yet delighted. The message was clear: delight is dangerous. Historians still argue whether these warnings were about protecting young women or controlling them. Some say the rules were meant to help women succeed in society's rigid system. Others argue it was never about help at all. It was about silence. A woman laughing uncontrollably might imply that she thinks for herself, that she's evaluating the world on her own terms. And in this particular ecosystem, independent thought is as welcome as muddy boots on a white carpet. You finish your drink, the bubbles fizzing against your upper lip like little secrets. A gentleman approaches. He bows. You curtsy. It's automatic, like clockwork. You dance. He talks. You nod. He jokes. It's okay. Not brilliant, not hilarious, but the kind of joke meant to fill silence and test your response. You let out a small laugh, controlled, charming, just enough to show appreciation, but not so much as to imply you've lost control of your faculties. He smiles. Success. But then, just as the music swells and you're gliding past a pair of watchful chaperones, he says something genuinely funny, unexpected, clever. It catches you off guard, and without thinking, your laugh breaks free. It's loud, it's bright. It rings off the marble like a dropped goblet, and everything stops. Not the music, it keeps going, dutiful and oblivious. But the moment freezes. You see it happen in slow motion. One woman's eyes narrow. A gentleman lifts an eyebrow. A chaperone whispers behind a fan. You feel it like a wave crashing over your shoulders. Heat, shame, defiance. The gentleman, your dance partner, looks startled. Not offended. Exactly. Just surprised. You smile. Quickly. Demurely. Trying to pull the moment back under the rug. But it's too late. The laugh has been heard. It's already halfway to the drawing room gossip circuit. You finish the dance. He bows. You curtsy. He does not return. The next few dances pass you by. You retreat to the edge of the room, trying to calm your breath, wondering if anyone is still watching. You wish you could be like one of those actresses you saw last week, bold, loud, immune to judgment. But here, laughter isn't bold. It's foolish, or worse, unfeminine. Quirky tidbit time in one actual 19th century medical treatise. A doctor claimed that excessive laughter in women could cause uterine displacement. Yes, that was a thing. You almost laugh again, just thinking about it. But you don't. You're already on thin ice. The funny thing is, this entire system is built on illusion. The gowns, the jewels, the dance cards, they sparkle so brightly. They almost make you forget the price of admission. But then you remember. You remember every instruction, every correction. You remember that laughing too freely might mean going home without a partner. And in this world, a woman without a partner is a woman without a future. You overhear someone murmur, "She's spirited, isn't she?" And in that tone, spirited doesn't sound like a compliment. But across the room, you catch something unusual. A girl, maybe 17, flushed from dancing, is giggling uncontrollably with her friend. They're tucked behind a potted palm, trying not to draw attention, but failing spectacularly. Their laughter is like birdsong, sudden, high, impossible to ignore. One girl snorts, the other gasps. They clutch at each other, shoulders shaking. You brace yourself for the reprimand, but it doesn't come. Instead, a young man nearby glances over and smiles. Not a cruel smile, a charmed one. The girls don't even notice. You watch them and feel something stir jealousy, perhaps, or admiration. They don't yet know the cost, or maybe they do, and they've decided not to pay it. And you begin to wonder what it would feel like to join them. Just once. To step outside the glass dome of perfection and let yourself laugh like nobody's watching, even though everyone definitely is. As the night winds down, you find yourself back near the door, watching the carriages pull up in the wet street beyond. Your gloves are wrinkled. Your cheeks are sore, not from smiling, from not smiling. From holding back, you climb into the carriage and exhale, fogging the window for a second. You draw a tiny smiley face in the mist, then immediately wipe it away. Tomorrow, people will talk. You'll hear it from your mother, or your aunt, or the woman who always smells like mothballs in judgment. But somewhere inside you, something has changed. You're not afraid of the laugh anymore. Not completely. Next, you'll step into the parlor of an all-female salon where intellectual women dare to talk politics, art, and even laugh out loud. You might be surprised by who leads the conversation. You step into the parlor of a London townhouse where gas lamps cast a warm glow over heavy velvet curtains and walls lined with rows of well-thumbed books. The air carries the rich aroma of burning coal and faint hints of bergamot from the tea. It's cozy in a way that makes you want to curl up. But the conversation here is anything but sleepy. This is a salon, a gathering place where women who refuse to be just ornamental listen and speak in turns. The host, Mrs. Langley, is a formidable woman with a sharp wit and sharper eyes. She commands the room not with loud proclamations, but with a presence that hushes you instantly. You settle into a carved wooden chair, trying not to fidget with your gloves as the guests start to talk. The topic tonight is as daring as the secret giggles you heard in the ballroom politics. The suffrage movement is stirring, and these women are at its heart. They talk about voting, education, and their place in the world. And yes, they laugh a lot. But this laughter isn't frivolous. It's not the kind you hear in music halls or behind fans at the theater. This laughter has teeth. It cuts through hypocrisy and shatters pretense. When Mrs. Langley chuckles, it's because she's just delivered a punchline so sharp it leaves a mark. When Miss Rivers laughs, it's because she's found a way to expose the absurdity of a law that calls women too delicate to vote. Here, laughter is a weapon and a shield. It binds the women together. A secret language that says, we're in this fight together. You realize that these women are rewriting the rules in real time, even if society at large refuses to notice. Mainstream history tells us that Victorian women's salons were crucial incubators for ideas that would eventually reshape society. They provided a rare space for intellectual freedom, where women discussed everything from literature to law. But beneath that, they nurtured a less tangible force, the courage to speak and laugh out loud. There's a quirky detail that often gets overlooked. Some salon attendees kept diaries filled not just with political musings, but with jokes, humorous sketches, and even comic poems mocking their male counterparts. These documents suggest that humor was more than relief. It was a form of resistance, a way to reclaim power without stepping outside the boundaries that society tried so hard to enforce. Historians still argue whether these salons were truly revolutionary or simply elite gatherings that excluded most women. Some claim they created a bubble of privilege, disconnected from the harsh realities faced by working-class women. Others argue that the laughter and debate inside those rooms sent ripples far beyond the townhouse walls. You watch Mrs. Langley pass around a delicate porcelain cup of tea, its steam curling like a secret. A young woman reads aloud a satirical essay mocking the idea that women's voices were too shrill for public debate. The room erupts with quiet laughter, punctuated by knowing glances. It's intoxicating. This blend of intellect and humor. You lean in, hanging on every word, your heart pounding with a mix of admiration and longing. You wonder what it would be like to belong here, to laugh freely without fearing the consequences. But the door opens, and a new guest arrives, a stern-faced woman in black, a social reformer known for her fiery speeches and relentless activism. She scans the room with a glance that could cut glass, then offers a dry, almost sarcastic chuckle at the latest joke about Parliament's obsession with propriety. Her presence shifts the mood. The laughter becomes sharper, more pointed. There's a tension between decorum and defiance, a delicate dance that leaves you breathless. You realize that the salon is a battleground, where laughter isn't just about joy, it's about survival. Every chuckle carries the weight of unspoken challenges. Every smile masks fears of backlash. As the evening wears on, you feel yourself being drawn deeper into this world. The women share stories of personal struggles, victories, and moments of quiet rebellion. You learn that some have faced ridicule, even ostracism, for daring to laugh in public. Others have used humor to diffuse hostile situations, turning scorn into solidarity. You catch yourself laughing along, a genuine, unguarded sound that surprises even you. It feels like a release, like breathing underwater for the first time. But then the clock chimes midnight, and the spell breaks. The women start gathering their wraps and bonnets, preparing to return to their separate lives. You stand with them, the weight of the night settling in your bones. Outside, the rain has stopped. The streets are slick and shimmering, reflecting the gas lamps like a river of stars. You pull your cloak tight around you and step into the night, carrying with you the echo of laughter that feels both fragile and fierce. You wonder how many other women, across the city and beyond, are holding on to that same fragile courage. How many are waiting for the moment when they too can laugh freely without fear, without shame, and you realize that this laughter, quiet or loud, is a kind of rebellion, a promise that one day it might be safe to laugh out loud in public and simply be tomorrow. You'll encounter a very different kind of woman, one who challenges Victorian norms not with gentle humor, but with sharp satire that cuts to the bone. And her story might just change how you see laughter forever. The next morning breaks over London with a pale, hesitant light filtering through lace curtains, casting delicate shadows on polished wooden floors. You wake to the muffled clatter of horse hooves on cobblestones and the distant call of street vendors beginning their daily rounds. The air smells damp and faintly of coal smoke, a scent that's as much a part of Victorian London as the fog itself. You dress carefully, selecting a blouse with a high collar and a skirt that falls in gentle folds. You want to step out looking the part of a respectable woman. Yet underneath, you feel something restless, something daring. The memory of last night's salon laughter lingers like a secret melody, urging you toward something new. Today, you find yourself at the doorstep of a small, crowded theater tucked away in a narrow side street. The sign above the door reads simply, Miss Audley's Comedy Club. It's an unassuming place, but inside, the air is electric with anticipation. You slip into a seat in the dim auditorium, the scent of grease paint and sawdust filling your nostrils. Around you, a diverse crowd buzzes with excitement, working-class women in simple bonnets, gentlemen with their top hats resting on their knees, and a sprinkling of curious young ladies like yourself, eager for something different. On stage, Miss Audley, a sharp-eyed woman in a tailored jacket, steps into the light. She's known for her biting satire and fearless commentary on the hypocrisies of Victorian society. Her smile is mischievous, almost conspiratorial, and the moment she opens her mouth, the room leans in. Her jokes slice through social pretenses with surgical precision. She mocks the endless corset fashions that squeeze and suffocate women into unnatural shapes. She lampoons the absurdity of etiquette manuals that warn against excessive merriment as if joy itself were a dangerous vice. She even takes aim at the popular novels that paint women as passive angels or tragic figures, exposing the cliches with a wink and a nudge. You find yourself laughing openly, a full-throated laugh that surprises even you. It bubbles up from deep within, raw and exhilarating. Around you, others join in some chuckle quietly, others roar with delight. But amid the laughter, there's an edge, a recognition that this humor is more than entertainment. It's a form of protest, a way to reclaim voice and agency in a world that often insists on silence. A mainstream historical fact surfaces in your mind. The Victorian era saw the rise of music halls and variety theaters, spaces where performers like Miss Audley could challenge societal norms under the guise of comedy. These venues were both popular entertainment and subtle battlegrounds for cultural change. Yet, quirky as it sounds, some Victorian audiences believed laughter to be unhealthy for women, a frivolity that could lead to hysteria or worse. One period pamphlet warned that unrestrained laughter might cause dangerous disturbances of the nervous system. It's almost laughable now, but back then, such ideas were taken seriously. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were sincere medical advice or just another way to police female behavior. Either way, women who laugh too loudly risk being labeled unstable, improper, or even morally suspect. You watch as Miss Audley's act shifts tone, becoming more pointed. She tells a story about a society lady who refuses to dance or smile, convinced that such displays would damage her reputation. Then, in a voice dripping with irony, she imagines the lady's secret fantasy to throw off her bonnet, kick up her heels, and laugh until she cries. The crowd erupts, and you feel the laughter wrap around you like a warm cloak. There's comfort here in the shared joy, the collective release, but there's also a flicker of discomfort. You catch yourself glancing at the exit, wondering who might be watching, judging. The door swings open suddenly, and a stern-faced chaperone steps inside, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. The mood shifts instantly. The laughter fades, replaced by nervous whispers. Miss Audley pauses, her smile faltering just a fraction before she recovers and launches into a gentler joke. You realize, once again, that laughter in Victorian society is a delicate dance one that requires constant vigilance. To laugh too loudly, or in the wrong company, could lead to whispers behind your back, social exclusion, or worse. But tonight, in this small theater filled with sparks of rebellion, laughter feels like freedom. It's a crack in the facade, a glimpse of something real beneath the layers of corsets and etiquette. As you leave the theater, the cool night air fills your lungs, sharp and bracing. You hear distant church bells and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. Your heart feels lighter, your steps more sure. Tomorrow promises a different stage, a drawing room filled with guests sipping tea and exchanging polite laughter. But tonight, you carry with you the memory of bold humor, fierce and unapologetic. And you wonder if laughter can be both a weapon and a refuge. What will happen when women stop fearing it altogether? The next stop on your journey leads you to a quiet countryside estate, where a woman renowned for her poetic wit is said to laugh so freely that it scandalizes the neighbors. Her story might just change how you think about laughter's power to heal and to disrupt. The countryside greets you like a whispered secret, a sharp contrast to London's smoky streets and gas-lit alleys. You trudge along a narrow gravel path, the crunch underfoot, rhythmic and oddly soothing. Around you, sprawling fields stretch toward a horizon softened by the afternoon haze, and the scent of freshly cut hay mingles with a faint hint of lavender from a nearby garden. It feels as though time itself moves slower here, as if the pace of the city's rigid social dance has loosened its grip. Ahead, the grand silhouette of a Victorian manor emerges, its stone walls weathered but proud. Ivy crawls up its facade like a natural decoration, and the windows glint in the waning sunlight. This is the estate of Eleanor Whitmore, a poet known not just for her exquisite verses, but for her unabashed laughter, a rarity, and often a scandal. In polite society, you're ushered into a drawing room filled with soft light and the gentle hum of a piano playing somewhere in the background. Plush velvet cushions and intricately carved furniture create an atmosphere of genteel elegance. But Eleanor herself is anything but reserved. She sits near the fireplace, a bright flame flickering beside her, her eyes sparkling with mischief. As you settle into a seat, Eleanor recites a poem that starts solemnly, then veers suddenly into wit and unexpected humor. The contrast catches you off guard, drawing a smile from deep inside. Her voice lilts, carrying a cadence that's both soothing and provocative. It's easy to see how her work unsettles the status quo. She's weaving laughter into art, making joy a serious matter. The paradox here is fascinating. Victorian culture often demanded that women's emotions be carefully regulated, with laughter viewed as a frivolous or even dangerous excess. Yet Eleanor's poetry uses humor as a lens to examine grief, love, and society's hypocrisies. You find yourself wondering whether laughter, in her hands, is a kind of truth-telling. A mainstream historical fact surfaces poetry salons like Eleanor's were central to Victorian cultural life, offering rare spaces for women to express themselves creatively and socially. They often blurred the lines between public and private, art and activism. But here's a quirky tidbit that might surprise you. Eleanor was known for occasionally bursting into loud, genuine laughter mid-recital, a habit that shocked many of her contemporaries, who believed a lady should maintain a composed demeanor at all times. Some guests found it infectious. Others whispered about her lack of decorum. Historians still debate whether Eleanor's laughter was a radical act of self-expression or merely a charming eccentricity tolerated within her elite circle. What's clear is that she challenged the idea that women should be silent, serious ornaments, instead claiming joy as part of her identity. As the evening progresses, Eleanor invites you to share your thoughts, encouraging a gentle back and forth where humor and reflection mingle freely. The crackling fire, the faint scent of wood smoke, and the soft rustle of turning pages create a cocoon of intimacy. You feel a rare sense of connection, as if the laughter floating in the air is stitching together fragile threads of courage. But beneath this warmth lies a tension. Eleanor's boldness comes at a cost. Gossip trails her like a shadow, and some neighbors whisper that her laughter is improper, unbecoming of a woman of her station. There's talk of scandal, veiled threats of social exile. You glimpse the loneliness that sometimes accompanies defiance, a reminder that freedom often exacts a price. Still, Eleanor's laughter rings clear, a beacon in the dim expectations that shroud Victorian womanhood. She embodies a tension many women face, the pull between societal conformity and personal authenticity. You recall the scent of the garden outside, the sharp sweetness of lavender, and the earthy smell of soil mixing with the fading warmth of the fire. It's a sensory memory that feels symbolic, like the blend of restraint and rebellion that defines this era. As the evening wanes, Eleanor shares a private story about a moment when her laughter saved her from despair, transforming pain into resilience. It's an emotionally immersive moment, raw and honest, that lingers with you long after the words have faded. You stand to leave, stepping back into the cooling night. The stars overhead are bright and indifferent, watching silently as you ponder the complex dance of laughter and fear, courage and caution. Tomorrow, your journey takes you back to the city's heart, to a world of strict social codes and whispered scandals where a single laugh could unravel a woman's reputation and challenge the very fabric of Victorian society. But tonight, you carry with you the echo of Eleanor's laughter, a reminder that even in the most constrained spaces, joy can be an act of rebellion, a spark of freedom in the quiet dark. You wake to the faint sound of church bells ringing through a foggy London morning. Their slow, somber tolls echoing over rooftops slick with overnight rain. The streets are quiet, save for the occasional clip-clop of a solitary horse-drawn carriage splashing through puddles. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders and step out into the gray chill, your breath curling in small clouds as you make your way toward a grand townhouse in one of the city's most respectable neighborhoods. Inside, the drawing room is immaculately arranged, with polished mahogany furniture, heavy damask curtains, and a fireplace glowing with a soft, welcoming flame. Ladies in finely embroidered dresses and men in tailored suits chat in low tones over tea and delicate pastries. But beneath the surface of polite conversation lurks a tense awareness, something unspoken yet deeply felt. This is the world of the social elite, where appearances matter more than truth and silence often carries more weight than speech. Here, laughter is a careful performance controlled, modest, never too loud or unseemly. It's a currency of civility, a way to signal belonging without rocking the boat. You listen as Lady Ashford recounts a recent scandal involving a young woman who dared to laugh too heartily at a public event. The tale unfolds with hushed shock and thinly veiled judgment. The woman was whispered about in drawing rooms for weeks, her reputation tarnished by what was described as unseemly behavior. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Victorian society imposed strict codes of conduct on women, with public laughter often deemed inappropriate or even vulgar. It was linked to ideas about femininity and morality, where a woman's laughter needed to be refined and controlled to maintain her social standing. But the story you hear also reveals a quirky detail rarely mentioned in textbooks some women carried small. Discreet fans not just to shield their faces, but to stifle laughter or coughing fits during social gatherings. The fan was both a fashion accessory and a subtle tool of self-censorship. Historians still debate how deeply these social restrictions affected women's mental health and personal freedoms. Some argue that the pressure to suppress natural expressions like laughter contributed to widespread anxiety and emotional distress among Victorian women. Others suggest that women found covert ways to subvert these norms, using private spaces and coded language to express themselves. You watch Lady Ashford sip her tea with perfect grace, but there's a flicker of something behind her eyes, a trace of regret. Perhaps or the memory of times when she too wished to laugh freely, but felt bound by invisible chains. The conversation drifts to the subject of proper laughter, with one gentleman remarking that a melodious giggle was acceptable, but a loud guffaw was a sign of poor breeding. The ladies exchanged knowing glances, their smiles tight and practiced. You can almost feel the weight of generations pressing down on these faces, the inherited expectations, the quiet policing of behavior that shaped every gesture, every word. Yet, even in this stifling atmosphere, you detect moments of subtle rebellion. A young woman brushes a tear of laughter from her eye after a particularly witty remark, her hand trembling slightly as she composes herself. Another woman shares a brief, conspiratorial smile with her companion, a spark of shared understanding that transcends the room's decorum. It's a reminder that laughter, even when constrained, can be a form of connection, a quiet assertion of humanity within rigid structures. You think back to the small fans you saw, the whispered tales of scandal, the tightrope walk between expression and repression. It's clear that Victorian women lived in a world where laughter was both a gift and a risk, a source of joy and a potential weapon turned against them. As the gathering winds down, you step outside into the chill evening air, the city lights casting long shadows on wet pavement. You wrap your cloak tighter, the stories of constrained laughter settling in your mind like a heavy cloak. Tomorrow, you will follow the footsteps of a woman who dared to laugh loudly and publicly, challenging not just social norms, but the very idea of what it meant to be a woman in Victorian England. Her story is one of courage and controversy, and it might just change everything you thought you knew about laughter's place in history. For now, though, you walk through the misty streets, the soft echo of polite laughter lingering like a ghost, reminding you of all the hidden smiles behind Victorian facades. You find yourself once again enveloped by the fog-thick streets of London, the gas lamps flickering like cautious beacons in the dusk, the clatter of carriage wheels and the murmur of well-dressed crowds carry you toward a modest theater on Drury Lane. Known as the home of an unconventional performer, Lydia Hamilton Smith, she is a woman who laughs loud, laughs often, and has stirred quite the uproar in the upper echelons of Victorian society. Tonight's show is a curious blend of humor and social commentary, a performance daring enough to push the boundaries of what women could say, or more importantly, how they could express joy. You take a seat in the front row, feeling the buzz of excitement ripple through the audience, a mix of commoners and a few daring aristocrats who have slipped in incognito. Lydia steps onto the stage with a confident stride, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Her laughter is infectious from the start, robust and genuine, breaking the silence of an era where women were taught to keep their amusement subdued. She tells stories of daily life with a sharp wit that cuts through Victorian pretenses, drawing chuckles, gasps, and outright guffaws. You notice that some of the older, more conservative audience members exchange uneasy glances, a reflection of the strict social codes dictating female comportment. Lydia's laughter is not just entertainment. It's a bold challenge to the stifling rules of her time. A historical fact anchors the moment music halls in Victorian London became crucial venues for working-class entertainment and social critique. with female performers like Lydia Hamilton Smith using humor to comment on class, gender roles, and politics. Yet, despite their popularity, women performers were often viewed with suspicion, considered morally dubious if they laughed too loudly or displayed too much freedom. But Lydia's story has a quirky twist. According to some whispered rumors, she carried a small, hidden pocket mirror to catch herself laughing too loudly, a playful nod to the constant scrutiny she faced. This tiny prop, both humorous and poignant, symbolized the balancing act between self-expression and societal expectations. Historians continue to debate whether such self-monitoring was a survival tactic or a subtle form of rebellion. Either way, Lydia's laughter and her audience's reactions reveal the complex social dance around female joy. As Lydia weaves her stories, you feel a swell of empathy for her. Her courage to claim laughter publicly, despite the judgment and threats, is palpable. The room seems alive, vibrating with the energy of shared laughter and the thrill of witnessing something dangerous and transformative. You can almost feel the scratchy texture of the stage wood beneath your fingertips, the scent of oil lamps mingling with the faint perfume of the crowd, the warmth of the packed theater pressing around you like a protective cocoon. Yet, amid the laughter, there is a subtle, lingering tension, knowing that outside these walls, the world waits to condemn women like Lydia for daring to be heard so freely. At the show's close, Lydia's hearty laughter echoes in your ears, a joyful defiance that lingers long after the lights dim. Stepping back into the cool London night, you realize that Lydia's story is a vivid illustration of the power and peril of laughter in Victorian society. Her audacity paved the way for future generations, challenging the notion that women must be quiet, restrained, and controlled. Tomorrow, you will explore another facet of this story, the medicalization of female laughter, and how Victorian doctors tried to control it through questionable treatments that seem bizarre, sometimes even comical today. For now, you carry with you the warmth of Lydia's laughter, a beacon cutting through the fog of repression. You wake once again beneath the gray canopy of Victorian London, the air thick with the smell of coal smoke and damp stone. The city hums quietly beneath a steady drizzle, the cobblestones glistening like wet jewels. Today, you visit the dim interior of a doctor's office, a place heavy with the scent of antiseptics and dried herbs. The walls are lined with shelves filled with glass jars and leather-bound medical volumes, their spines cracked from use. Here, you step into the shadowy world where Victorian medicine intersected with societal control, especially over women's laughter. This room, you realize, holds stories darker and stranger than any drawing room scandal or theatrical uproar. It's where laughter was scrutinized not just as a social faux pas, but as a medical problem. Sometimes even a symptom of hysteria, a diagnosis with a history as tangled as the corsets Victorian women were forced to wear. Victorian doctors often believed that excessive laughter in women signaled nervous disorders or moral failings. The term hysteria itself comes from the Greek word for uterus, reflecting a now outdated belief that a woman's womb was the root cause of many ailments, including emotional excesses like laughter. Women who laughed too freely might find themselves prescribed treatments, ranging from the mundane to the bizarre, from strict rest cures to more invasive interventions like pelvic massage or even electrical stimulation. You can almost feel the cold metal instruments on the doctor's table, their smooth surfaces gleaming under flickering gaslight. There's an eerie, tactile contrast between the clinical sterility of this room and the vibrant, rebellious laughter you've encountered elsewhere. A mainstream historical fact here is that the rest cure, popularized by Dr. Silas Weir Mitchell, was prescribed for nervous women thought to be suffering from hysteria or neurasthenia. This treatment often involved enforced bed rest, isolation, and dietary restrictions, with little regard for the patient's autonomy or emotional well-being. Yet, a quirky detail might make you pause. Some doctors believe that laughter itself could be contagious in a pathological sense, warning that one woman's loud laughter might inspire others to lose control, spreading emotional instability across social groups. This led to efforts to control and monitor women's behavior in public and private spheres alike. Historians still argue about the extent to which these medical practices were genuinely concerned with health versus serving as tools to enforce rigid gender norms. Were doctors truly trying to heal? Or were they complicit in policing women's freedom of expression? The truth is often murky, tangled in layers of gender bias, scientific misunderstanding, and societal fear. Sitting in this stuffy room, you imagine the loneliness and frustration of women subjected to these treatments, sent away from their families, silenced, and reduced to symptoms. It's a profoundly emotional moment, feeling the distance between their lived experience and the cold, clinical judgments passed on them. You notice a faint, almost imperceptible sound from outside, a soft laughter, muffled but persistent. It's like a ghost of defiance haunting this oppressive space, a reminder that even here, in the heart of control, laughter persisted as a form of resistance. You remember Eleanor's poetry salon, Lydia's raucous performances, and the delicate fans used to hide giggles. Now, the medicalization of laughter adds a darker dimension to the story, a stark warning of the consequences women faced for something as natural as joy. As you rise to leave, the faint scent of lavender from a small vase on the windowsill mingles with the antiseptic, a sensory reminder of the fragile humanity trapped in these rigid walls. Tomorrow, your path leads to the personal diaries and letters of Victorian women, where laughter appears encoded. Tender moments, secret rebellions, inked in quiet script. For now, you step out into the rain-soaked streets, the echo of silenced laughter haunting your steps. You open a small, leather-bound diary beneath the dim glow of a flickering candle. Its pages yellowed and delicate like dried petals. The scent of old paper and faint traces of lavender perfume mingle in the air. Here, in these personal writings, laughter breathes quietly, not the boisterous, defiant kind of Lydia's stage or Eleanor's salon, but soft, stolen moments of joy that slip between the lines of Victorian restraint. You trace your finger over the cursive script, feeling the pulse of a woman's secret world. This diary belonged to Margaret Ellis, a middle-class Victorian woman whose life was constrained by expectations and duties. Her entries reveal how she used laughter as a refuge, a balm against loneliness and the weight of social decorum. Margaret describes evenings spent with close friends, sharing whispered jokes behind tightly drawn curtains. Her laughter muffled by a handkerchief or swallowed behind a sip of tea. The very act of laughing was dangerous, a gesture that could lead to gossip or worse. Accusations of impropriety. A mainstream historical fact is that private diaries and letters were often the only places where Victorian women could express their true feelings, including humor and laughter, without fear of social reprisal. These personal writings give historians rare insight into the emotional lives hidden beneath public facades. But Margaret's diary holds a quirky detail. She once recorded an incident where she and her sister secretly laughed for nearly an hour over a misplaced word in a church sermon, describing the experience as deliciously wicked. This moment of shared laughter, though small, became a treasured memory, a secret rebellion against the strict solemnity demanded by their faith and community. Historians still debate the extent to which private laughter functioned as resistance or simply a coping mechanism. Was it a radical act? A way to reclaim joy and identity? Or was it more often a quiet escape from the pressures of conformity? The answer, like the laughter itself, is complex and layered. Reading Margaret's words, you feel an intimate connection. Her laughter feels like a fragile thread, linking her to you across time. You imagine the soft rustle of her dress, the faint scent of garden roses wafting through the open window, and the gentle crackle of the candle flame as she pens her thoughts. There's a loneliness here too, a sense of isolation that makes those small moments of laughter all the more precious. Margaret's diary reveals how laughter could be both a comfort and a secret burden, a double-edged sword in a society that prized silence and decorum over joy. As you close the diary, you're struck by the power of these hidden voices, the quiet defiance of women who laughed in shadows, knowing full well the risks they took. The candle guttering low. You wonder how many other secret smiles, suppressed giggles, and hidden chuckles have been lost to history, their stories untold. Tomorrow, your journey takes you into the realm of Victorian satire and caricature, where laughter turned sharp and public weaponized in the battle over women's roles and rights. But for now, you sit in the stillness, holding on to the delicate warmth of Margaret's laughter, a whisper across the ages. You step into the bustling streets of Victorian London once again, this time venturing into the colorful, chaotic world of print newspapers, magazines, and caricatures that shaped public opinion and stoked debates about gender and laughter. The clamor of the city feels louder here, a mix of hawkers' cries and the rhythmic pounding of horse hooves on cobblestones. The scent of ink and paper fills the air as you enter a small, smoky reading room where the latest satirical prints lie spread across a heavy wooden table. Before you lies a treasure trove of Victorian caricatures, bold, exaggerated images lampooning women who dared to step outside the boundaries of social decorum by laughing too freely. These caricatures are vivid and sometimes vicious, using humor as a weapon to police women's behavior and reinforce strict gender roles. The loud, unrestrained laugh of a woman is portrayed as grotesque or hysterical, a disruption of the proper social order. A mainstream historical fact, satirical magazines like Punch played a major role in Victorian society, using humor and caricature to critique politics, social issues, and cultural norms. However, their depictions of women often reinforce stereotypes about femininity and proper conduct, including the expectation that women's laughter should be demure and restrained. You lean closer to a particularly biting caricature showing a woman laughing uproariously in public, her mouth wide open, eyes rolling back, an image designed to shock and warn. The caption reads something along the lines of "the scandalous giggle monster," painting her laughter as monstrous and unnatural. But there's a quirky element you hadn't expected. Some of these caricatures incorporate subtle nods to contemporary fashion or slang, making them more than mere mockery. They are complex cultural texts reflecting layered attitudes toward women's social mobility and self-expression. One caricature, for example, depicts a woman clutching a parasol decorated with little laughing faces, a satirical jab at the commercialization of femininity. Historians still argue over how effective such caricatures were in enforcing norms versus giving women a way to laugh at the absurdity of those very rules. Did these public portrayals stifle female laughter, or did they inspire a more rebellious, knowing laughter behind closed doors? You notice the faint rustle of pages and the scratch of quills as writers crafted sharp-witted articles to accompany the images, further shaping how society perceived women's laughter as either charmingly delicate or dangerously uncontrolled. The emotional complexity here is striking on one hand. These prints marginalized women who broke from expected behavior. On the other, they reveal an undercurrent of fascination with female laughter's power to disrupt and delight. It's a tug of war between fear and admiration. You catch a faint sound outside a burst of genuine laughter from a nearby alley, raw and unfiltered, a stark contrast to the restrained laughter so often depicted in print. It's as if the city itself refuses to be tamed by caricature or convention. Your mind wanders to Eleanor's poetry gatherings, Lydia's theatrical defiance, and Margaret's secret diary. These caricatures form part of a public spectacle that both mocked and magnified the very laughter it sought to suppress. As you leave the reading room, the damp evening air hits your face, and you feel the weight of this complex history pressing down on you. The image of the giggle monster lingers, a reminder of how laughter, so natural and human, was transformed into a battleground of social control. Tomorrow, you'll explore the quiet spaces where women found laughter's freedom not in public stages or caricatured prints, but in the intimacy of friendship and family. For now, you carry with you the sharp edges of satire and the stubborn, enduring spark of laughter's rebellious heart. You find yourself stepping through the heavy oak door of a modest Victorian parlor, where the soft murmur of voices and the gentle clink of teacups create an atmosphere far removed from the public spectacle of caricatures and medical offices. Here, in the intimate sphere of friendship and family, laughter finds a different kind of freedom, one that is both fragile and fiercely guarded. The wallpaper's faded floral pattern seems to hold echoes of countless whispered jokes and quiet chuckles shared behind lace curtains. You settle into a high-backed chair beside the hearth, where a small group of women gather for an evening of conversation, storytelling, and laughter. The crackling fire sends flickering shadows dancing across the room, mingling with the scent of freshly brewed tea and worn leather-bound books. This private gathering is a sanctuary, a place where Victorian women dared to let their laughter spill freely without fear of judgment or reprisal. A mainstream historical fact is that Victorian women's social lives often centered around private salons and intimate gatherings, which provided a rare space for emotional expression and subversion of strict public codes. These settings allowed women to explore humor, share personal stories, and engage in subtle critiques of the society that constrained them. You overhear a soft giggle morph into a full-bodied laugh as one woman recounts a particularly embarrassing moment involving a stubborn corset and a runaway hoop skirt. The warmth of the laughter is palpable, a shared understanding that transcends the limitations imposed by the outside world. But there's a quirky detail here that you hadn't expected. Some women in these gatherings used coded language and inside jokes to discuss taboo topics, marriage, sexuality, and even political dissent, turning laughter into a secret code, a subtle act of rebellion hidden beneath polite smiles. Historians still debate how widespread and effective these private networks of laughter were in fostering female solidarity and resistance. Were these moments simply temporary escapes, or did they contribute to a broader, gradual shift in women's social and political consciousness? You reach out to touch the rough-hewn wood of the table, imagining the countless whispered confidences and bursts of laughter that have passed over its surface. There is something deeply human in these intimate moments, a tenderness and resilience that contrasts starkly with the public repression of female laughter. The emotional resonance is profound. You can almost feel the unspoken bonds of friendship, the shared vulnerability, and the relief that comes with laughter's release. The memory of Margaret's diary, Lydia's defiant performances, and the biting satire of caricatures all converge here, revealing the multifaceted nature of laughter as both a personal and political act. Outside, the distant toll of a church bell marks the passing of another hour. The quiet intimacy of this parlor offers a momentary refuge from the relentless pressures of Victorian society. Tomorrow, your journey will lead you to the early feminist writers who began to reclaim laughter as a symbol of empowerment and social change, challenging the old fears and stereotypes head-on. For now, you carry with you the soft echoes of laughter, shared in trusted company, a reminder that even in the darkest times, joy finds a way. You step into the flickering candlelight of a cramped Victorian study. Walls lined with stacks of pamphlets and dog-eared books. The air is thick with the smell of ink and pipe tobacco, and somewhere in the distance, a clock ticks relentlessly. Here, in this humble room, you encounter the voices of early feminist writers, women who dared to wield laughter as a weapon against the strictures that sought to silence them. Their words leap off the pages with boldness and wit, challenging centuries-old notions about femininity and propriety. You feel the pulse of rebellion in their writing, the sharp edge of sarcasm mingled with heartfelt appeals for freedom and equality. These women understood laughter not merely as amusement, but as a radical act of self-expression and resistance. They wrote essays, poems, and letters brimming with humor that could both comfort and provoke, destabilize and inspire. A mainstream historical fact here is that the late Victorian era saw a surge in women's rights activism, including campaigns for suffrage, education, and labor rights. Early feminist writers like Sarah Grand and Olive Schreiner used their platforms to critique social norms, often employing humor as a means to engage readers and challenge prevailing attitudes. One quirky tidbit: some feminist writers were known to use pseudonyms to publish their more daring or satirical works, allowing them to bypass censorship and social backlash. For example, George Eliot was actually Mary Ann Evans, who adopted a male pen name to be taken seriously, a kind of literary disguise that itself hints at the era's constraints on women's voices. Historians still argue about how much humor truly advanced the feminist cause versus how much it was dismissed as frivolous or undermining serious debate. Was laughter a strategic tool to disarm critics and rally supporters? Or was it sometimes used by opponents to trivialize women's demands? The balance remains a subject of lively, scholarly debate. You run your fingers over a worn copy of The Woman's Hour, a feminist periodical packed with sharp critiques and witty commentary. You can almost hear the voices behind the ink voices, determined not only to be heard, but to laugh in the face of oppression. The emotional charge in this room is electric. These women's laughter is fearless, a declaration of identity and autonomy. It's a stark contrast to the muted, constrained giggles of private parlors or the mocking caricatures of earlier sections. Here, laughter is a battle cry. You catch yourself smiling at a biting satire, targeting the idea that women's laughter was merely hysterical or inappropriate. Instead, it's presented as a sign of intellect, strength, and resilience. It's as if every joke, every ironic quip, is a brick laid in the foundation of future freedoms. The night deepens, and you imagine these writers gathered in secret meetings or correspondence, their laughter and words weaving together a tapestry of hope and change. Their humor does not erase the struggles they faced, but illuminates the courage it took to confront them. Tomorrow, you will witness the gradual transformation of public attitudes as the Victorian era gives way to the 20th century, setting the stage for new expressions of laughter and liberty. For now, you hold the spark of these feminist voices, close a beacon of defiance and hope in the dim light. You find yourself standing at the cusp of a changing era, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of new possibilities. The Victorian age, with all its intricate social rules and fears surrounding women's laughter, is beginning to yield to a modern world where laughter no longer needs to be whispered behind closed doors or smothered beneath layers of corsets and etiquette. This final chapter of your journey traces the slow, powerful evolution of public attitudes toward women's laughter as the 19th century slips into the 20th. The streets buzz with new inventions, the flicker of electric lights replacing gas lamps, the clatter of streetcars mixing with the hum of voices more bold and varied than ever before. Women gather in cafes, lecture halls, and public parks. Their laughter now part of a larger chorus demanding recognition and equality. The cultural landscape shifts, reflecting changes in art, literature, and politics that echo far beyond the drawing rooms of London. and the salons of Edinburgh. A mainstream historical fact anchors this transition. The early 20th century saw the rise of the suffragette movement, which not only campaigned for women's voting rights, but also challenged norms around female behavior, including the acceptability of open laughter and public expression. Laughter began to symbolize liberation, a joyful refusal to be silenced. One quirky yet revealing detail: some suffragettes used laughter as a tactic during protests, breaking the tension with unexpected giggles or chants that confused and disarmed their opponents. These moments of humor made headlines and forced society to reckon with the image of women who could be both serious activists and joyful individuals. Historians still debate how much of this transformation was a natural cultural evolution versus a deliberate strategy by women's movements to reclaim laughter as power. Did laughter simply follow social change, or did it help spark it? The complexity of this interplay continues to intrigue scholars today. You feel the emotional weight of this moment, this tipping point where laughter stops being dangerous and becomes a symbol of hope and resilience. Imagine the exhilaration of a woman stepping onto a stage or into a public square, her laughter ringing out clear and unashamed. A sharp contrast to the cautious chuckles of her Victorian predecessors. The sensory tapestry is rich. The crisp morning air, tinged with the smell of newspapers printing stories of rallies and speeches. The murmur of voices rising in laughter and song. The flash of camera bulbs capturing moments that will inspire generations. You recall the earlier stories: Margaret's secret diary, Lydia's defiant theater, the biting satire, the warm parlor gatherings, and the fierce feminist writers, and see them as threads weaving into this larger fabric of change. Each thread, fragile or bold, contributed to a growing tapestry of female laughter, no longer feared, but embraced. As you take a final breath in this transitional moment, you understand that laughter is not just sound, it's history, resistance, and joy entwined. The journey you've taken through Victorian fears reveals not only repression, but also the indomitable spirit of women who laughed anyway. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.